Ready, set, go!
Which state borders the Atlantic Ocean? Nevada, Massachusetts, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Massachusetts. Which state borders the Pacific Ocean? California, Michigan, Mississippi. California. Which state borders the Pacific Ocean? Missouri, Washington, Indiana, South Dakota. Washington. Which state borders the Pacific Ocean? South Carolina, Arkansas, Alaska. Alaska. Which state borders the Pacific Ocean? Nevada, Louisiana, West Virginia, Hawaii. Hawaii. Which state shares a border with New Mexico, South Dakota, Oklahoma, North Carolina. Oklahoma. Which state borders the Pacific Ocean? Massachusetts, Idaho, South Dakota, Oregon. Oregon. Which state borders the Mississippi River? Texas, Virginia, Louisiana, Kansas. Louisiana. Which state shares a border with Mexico? Idaho, Kentucky, Arizona, Rhode Island. Arizona. Which state borders the Mississippi River? Illinois, Kansas, Maine. Illinois. St. Paul is the capital of which state? Minnesota, Nevada. Minnesota. Which state shares a border with Mexico? Indiana, North Dakota, New Mexico, North New Mexico. Which state borders the Gulf of Mexico? Florida, Alaska. Florida. Which state borders the Gulf of Mexico? New York, Kansas, Mississippi, Mississippi. Which state shares a border with Michigan, Connecticut, Alaska, Wisconsin, New Jersey? Wisconsin. Which state borders the Gulf of Mexico? North Dakota, Utah, Alabama, Alabama. Which state shares a border with West Virginia, Ohio, Minnesota, Ohio? Which state shares a land border with Canada? Georgia, North Carolina, Louisiana, New York, New York. Which state borders the Atlantic Ocean? Connecticut, Hawaii, Connecticut. Which state borders the Great Lakes? Virginia, Kentucky, Michigan, Oklahoma. Raleigh is the capital of which state? Arizona, Kentucky, North Carolina, South North Carolina. Which state borders the Mississippi River? Tennessee, North Tennessee. Columbia is the capital of which state? Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, South Carolina. Richmond is the capital of which state? Pennsylvania, Maryland, Maine, Virginia. Bismarck is the capital of which state? Pennsylvania, North Dakota, New Mexico, North Dakota. Which state borders the Atlantic Ocean? Georgia, Missouri, Hawaii, Georgia. Which state borders the Great Lakes? Washington, South Carolina, Hawaii, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania. Which state borders the Gulf of Mexico? Alaska, Arkansas, Texas, Texas. Which state borders the Mississippi River? Texas, Nevada, Delaware, Missouri. Which state shares a border with Rhode Island? Massachusetts, Massachusetts. Which state shares a border with Idaho, Oregon, Mississippi, Oregon? Which state shares a border with Utah, Florida, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Colorado, Colorado? Which state borders the Pacific Ocean? Mississippi, Michigan, South Dakota, California, California. Trenton is the capital of which state? New Jersey, Alabama, Kentucky, Maryland, New Jersey. Providence is the capital of which state? Maryland, Florida, Rhode Island, Wisconsin, Rhode Island. Which state shares a land border with Canada? Vermont, South Carolina, Vermont. Pierre is the capital of which state? Missouri, New Hampshire, South Dakota, South Dakota. Which state shares a border with Utah, Montana, Virginia, Vermont, Wyoming, Wyoming? Which state shares a land border with Canada? Kansas, Louisiana, Montana, Iowa, Montana. Which state shares a border with New Hampshire, Georgia, Virginia, Kentucky, Massachusetts? Charleston is the capital of which state? West Virginia, West Virginia. Boise is the capital of which state? Idaho, Idaho. Which state borders the Great Lakes? Kentucky, North Carolina, Indiana, Indiana. Which state borders the Atlantic Ocean? Arkansas, Delaware, Michigan, Illinois. Delaware. Which state borders the Pacific Ocean? Arkansas, Rhode Island, Maine, Washington. Washington.